Good morning. I'm tired. So this video is going to be, another crossover kind of subject. I watched a video about defense in action games, and the premise of the video was that recent action games all kind of default, or I guess lean on, as if it's a crutch in their design, that all defense is just timing based. It's just time your roll correctly, time your parry correctly, time whatever correctly, and you avoid damage, and that's all it is. Whereas like certain other games, and I think he brought up the video brought up Sifu as an example, which I've never played that game, but apparently you have to time your dodges, and you have to choose the correct direction to dodge. So like if there's a vertical attack, you have to dodge to the side. If there's a horizontal attack, you have to duck, that kind of thing, I'm guessing. So there's like the video quoted as multiple layers of defense, which technically I don't think is true. It's not multiple layers. It's you have to choose the correct kind of defense. There's multiple layers in your decision making, because it's like, okay, I have to time this, okay, and what kind of attack it is. But while I think that's a shortcut for that kind of multiple choice, like multi-choice defense, and like decision making is just as important as timing. A lot of action games, particularly a game like Monster Hunter, which this video did not bring up, a lot of monsters, you still have to learn the monster's moveset really specifically, because there's a lot of attacks that will, the attack's active frames will outlast your dodge. So you have to dodge in a particular direction, not so much because it's a vertical attack and you have to dodge to the side. It's because this attack is moving from your right to your left, so you have to dodge to your right towards the beginning of the attack, so that you can so your invincibility frames will get you through the portions of the active hitbox that are touching you, and then you move out of the way of the attack, and then the rest of the attack's active frame, the active time, is safely away from you. That's what happens in Monster Hunter a lot. Or the attack is so huge that you have to have correct positioning and be kind of on the edge of the attack to begin with, and then dodge out of the way towards the edge and get out of the effective range. Because otherwise, if you're in the middle of it, unless you've got a ton of dodge boosting skills, you're fucked. You can't dodge it. Let me speed up here. So right then and there, I don't really fully agree with this concept, that this is something that action games are doing. The video did bring up Sekiro as an example, as it brought up, okay, yeah, your core defensive mechanic is the deflect. You're timing a parry. And then there are tacked on little extra things like the Makiri counter, where you dodge forward into a thrust attack and you step on the enemy's weapon. He didn't even bring up sweeps, where you have to jump over the attack, or grabs where you just have to get the fuck out of the way, or other unblockable attacks where it's they're almost kind of contextual. Certain unblockable attacks in Sekiro have really, you might have to jump and dodge forward, jump forward over the enemy to get out of this attack, that kind of thing. So, but the video cited these as kind of extra exceptions to the rule, which is a fair assessment. They are exceptions to the rule. You are deflecting 80-90% of the time, but I think it's smart design, honestly. It's This is your core defensive mechanic. You're always doing this, but then all of the perilous attacks, as they're called, big red kanji flashes up on the screen, and there's a sound effect, and you go, oh, fuck! And you have to kind of memorize, like, not memorize, but you have to learn a lot of enemy movesets. If it's an enemy you haven't encountered before, you see that Makiri counter, or not Makiri, that perilous attack kanji flash up, you're like, oh no, what is this? And you're probably going to get hit by it the first time. But as you play the game, you still kind of learn, even enemies you haven't seen before. Perilous pops up, and they take a certain stance, like they levy their weapons straight towards you. That's probably a thrust. And you get that split second of decision making and reaction to do something about it. And going back, that's something Monster Hunter does really, really well. A lot of these attacks, you have to learn how to properly dodge them, or block them, or just avoid them via trial and error. Like, you can try to dodge it normally, you're like, oh, that move's really active. I can't just dodge normally. I have to dodge in a particular way, where my positioning has to be better. So you learn to attack this monster from a certain position to be safer in regards to that one problem attack. And, you overextend because you're like, yeah, I can hit him more. But that's part of the process. And that's another layer of your defense in a game like Monster Hunter. And, certain other games do this too. This video didn't bring up Space Marine, but Space Marine is all I've been playing, so fuck you. That game doesn't have the same kind of layered defense, but it does have two different types of defense, essentially. Your weapon and dodge. And there's three different types of weapon defense. There's balanced, fencing, and block. And largely, they kind of accomplish the same thing. They're like a parry or a block. You intercept the attack with your weapon. This is your kind of primary defense because a lot of actions cancel into block or parry. You can't cancel into a dodge. And the game is kind of set up to deal with it this way, where a lot of the majority of enemy attacks are parryable or blockable. I'll just say blockable because they're the same thing effectively in the game. If you can block it, you can parry it. The majority of the attacks are blockable, but there are plenty, and every enemy, most of them, that's like Majora's level or up, that aren't just like the little baby guys. They have at least one unblockable attack, and there's a sound cue and a visual effect. But sometimes that's not enough to save you. You react incorrectly. So you're just reacting to try to block shit, and then you see the enemy twitch, and it's an unblockable trigger, and you just get hit now when you should have dodged it. So it gets like, a quarter of the way there, maybe halfway there, towards like multi-layered defense in this way, because you still have like your primary defensive option. But it's also, depending on what weapon defense type you pick, you get different rewards, and that will affect your decision making. I think changing reward for something is always a really smart way to affect how you go about defense. And this is something that comes up in fighting games a lot. It affects how a fighting game feels. Like, in most fighting games, you've got a high-low defense system where your enemy can throw out mid-attacks or overheads and low attacks, and you as the defender can only properly defend against one of them at a time. You can either block low or you can block mid. Or high. Like, the language changes from game to game, but I'm going to say, like, you can block high or low. And, if you're blocking low, a high attack will just hit you, or a mid attack, or an overhead, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. So while that is some decision making and there's reaction there, it's a lot less timing based, because you don't have to time it specifically. You just hold the block button and choose a direction, or however the game's blocking works. Some games will have a kind of optional timing-based system where you've got like a perfect guard or a parry, like Street Fighter Third Strike has the parry system where you can block normally, but if instead of blocking with back away from your opponent, you hit forward instead and time it specifically, you get a parry, which is way more advantageous, but way riskier. That skews reward for both you and your opponent. Games like Soul Calibur have a guard impact system where you kind of do the same thing. You hit forward and guard, and it's a parry, it's a reject. It knocks your opponent's weapon out of the way and gets you some kind of reward. A game like Pokken has had a big problem with this system because it was there was a three-way kind of attack system with attack, counterattack, and grab. But that's not exactly important. I'm not going to go into it. It was just like you would kind of choose one of these offensive options on your defense but it was like a hard read call out of what your opponent was doing. Kind of analogous to Shoryuken from Street Fighter, where it's like an invincible uppercut and you just call out your opponent being a little sloppy with their offense. That kind of thing. It's similar to a parry in that it's like an offensive or active timing-based call-out thing, but it was like way more all-in risky in Pokken. And the problem with it was whoever gets hit on offense or defense will just take a third of their life in a combo. So it was kind of like a wash. I'll just pick a thing. One of us is going to die. Which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I still played the hell out of Pokken. And I think partially coming from fighting games, this kind of timing-based system and a lot of action games, it's kind of whatever. I don't find Souls games to be very difficult. I've played them for a long time. But when I first started playing them, as soon as I understood, my role has invincibility, fuck, the game's not hard anymore. It might take me a little bit to learn something, learn a monster, learn a boss, learn whatever. But it's not hard because it's not fighting against another human that can make all these decisions. It's just kind of not on the same level of stress, so it's not hard. I'll learn it eventually. And, an individual boss might take me 4 or 5 hours to beat. But I'm just learning the monster's moveset. I'm not really stressed out about it. It's just I was wrong. Fuck. I mistimed the fuck out of that. I just got wombo fucked to oblivion, and now I'm dead. But that's also kind of a philosophy thing, or a perspective thing, where in a Souls game or an action game, dying isn't exactly a fail state. The fail state is when you quit. That's the fail state. Otherwise, to try to bring this back to D&D, how would you implement these kinds of systems into, not even just you could come up with a whole RPG from scratch with these kind of systems layered in, and that's probably the easier way to do it. But to as we all do, tack stuff onto 5e or games we're playing, how would you do this? Maybe, you could attach it to each kind of the 3 damage types: slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. Each one of those has you can defend specifically against that type of damage. But you also have to, like, I guess, open up options so that, like, most enemies can do at least 2 of them. Maybe you can come up with, like, a rock, paper, scissors type of system there. Like, you know, piercing, you dodge to the side. Slashing, you duck, I guess. And then bludgeoning, you get out of the way. Like, because you can't really block bludgeoning damage, that kind of thing. But, so it's like, okay, when you're defending, you get to declare a defense type you're doing. And then when the attack resolves, you know, something like, okay, you guys both, the attacker and the defender, choose an attacking type and a defense type. And then after you roll the dice, there's like a modifier depending on the interaction. Like, you know, if you picked, like, let's just keep it as rock, paper, scissors. If the attacker chose rock and the defender chose paper, okay, the attacker gets a penalty to their attack roll, so it's harder to hit them. Whereas if the defender instead in that same situation chose scissors, okay, the attacker gets a bonus to their attack roll. Whereas if they chose the same thing, no penalty or bonus. You could do something like that. Or maybe against different attacking types, you have different defenses. So like, okay, you've got a 22 AC versus piercing, or a 22 AC versus rock, and then you've got an 18 AC versus scissors, and a 13 AC versus paper. You could do that. That's a way to do it. But I think like a more active choice-based system is probably more interesting. But I'm not working on that right now. I'm not thinking about that. I've got other things to homebrew right now. But it's an idea. It's an idea. I'm not a huge fan of pursuing, but it's an idea. And, you know, holding these kinds of ideas and concepts in your mind, thinking about them, can lead to kind of breakthroughs in other spots. Like, oh, I didn't think about it this way. That could work here. In this other thing I'm kind of stuck on. You know, that's how it is. That's how I approach design a lot of the time. It's like, oh, that's a cool concept. Let me think about it. I don't like it. But it does help me in this other way. To complete this other kind of design I was stuck on. That's all I got for today. Language.